Welcome to Sunshine State Outdoors. Today we had big plans of bass fishing. We got shiners, we got some artificial baits. We went out on this lake that's currently behind me. This is Mike's parents' lake, or like a lake that they live on. And we fished the whole entire lake. Mike caught one bass. Big fish. It's a little bigger than 3 or 4 pounder. Get him up here. And then I caught one bass off this dock. Alright guys, so we're in the middle of shooting this video. We had some lines out. I've done caught myself a good sized bass. That's just about as big as the rod.
There he goes.
And that was pretty much it. So we decided to switch gears and we're going to discuss about alligator hunting and give you guys a little how-to on to alligator hunt here in the state of Florida. So in the state of Florida, you apply for tags in the month of May. If you win tags, then starting in August, per your week that you won, you get to start hunting. So there's 4 weeks, 4 main weeks. If you get tags for a lake, you get it for that week that you won the tags, week 1 through 4. And then at the mid-September range, all the way through the end of October, it opens up and you can hunt 24/7 this year. In years past, you've been able to hunt from 5 to 10, 5 o'clock in the afternoon to 10 o'clock in the morning. This year, it's 24/7, so it's going to be a little bit different this year. We're going to see how it plays out. But we're just going to run through every single thing that we have here in front of me, and we're just going to explain how to gator hunt. Hope you guys enjoy this video. If you guys do, hit that like and subscribe button. And then if you guys stay tuned, we're going to be discussing a giveaway that we're going to be doing, which is really exciting. So let's dive into it. Oh my God. Yeah!
Do it. There's a ton of different ways to gator hunt. Everybody does a little bit differently, but I would say, and Wade would probably agree with me, he's behind the camera right now, there's 3 main ways of gator hunting with obviously some slight variation in between. You've got running and gunning, which is just running after gators with a harpoon and throwing it at them basically. Baiting is very popular. We do a lot of that. We've caught some of our bigger gators on baiting. And then casting with a snatch hook, which is a big treble hook that's weighted. That may be the most popular way to do it. Between baiting and casting, that's definitely kind of what most people do, and we've caught big gators doing it all. So we just kind of wanted to go through some of our equipment, how we do it. Maybe you can learn something, try a new way. I know Wade and I personally have learned a lot about gator hunting just from watching YouTube videos. I mean, I still watch YouTube videos about it. They're my favorite videos to watch, and every time I learn a little trick here and there. So we'll start with baiting, because that's kind of maybe our main way of doing it. We use a rod. So if you look here, we've got it's basically an offshore fishing rod. This is a Penn 60, Squall 60. You don't need to get a really expensive one. You're not going to be fighting a fish on this. You're not going to be fighting a marlin on this. You're just going to be using this as a way to legally bait for gators. In order to bait for gators in the state of Florida, you have to have a line that is affixed to either something that's in the boat, affixed to the boat itself, or, you know, I guess you could hold something, but nobody does that. You're not really going to fight the gator with this. You're just going to, he's going to swallow the bait, and you're just going to keep tension on this so you know where the gator is. You know, the gator is going to swallow the bait, and if you put too much pressure, he can regurgitate it. He can spit it up because you're not allowed to use hooks, and I'll show you in a second what we do use. But this is just, you know, the gator swallows the bait, and you're keeping this, you know, with tension and tracking where the gator is, but you're not actually going to fight or pull or put a lot of tension on this if you don't have to. And so the reason why we use a big reel like this is because one of the ways we do it is we will spot a gator with binoculars. You're going to want a good set of binoculars. Spot a gator that we think's big or that we want to take. We're going to run over the gator full speed, you know, just wide open. Once you get about where the gator is, you're going to chuck the bait out and just keep this on free spool. Just like if you were trolling or, you know, pitching a bait at something, and just free spool out, you know, 300, 400 yards. And once you get far enough away, you can slow the boat down, you can stop, and then you can put the drag back on. And then you're just waiting. And the trick is, hopefully, that gator will surface, you know, relatively close to where he went down. A lot of times when gators see a boat or they see a human, they just go under, but they don't swim away. They just, they're used to seeing boats, so they submerge, wait 10-15 minutes, and they come right back up where they were. So if you're accurate enough, you get that bait close enough to the gator, he'll resurface, smell the bait, see the bait, hopefully it was close, and he'll go over to it and bite it. So basically you're going to pitch that bait where you think the gator is, run over him full speed, get far enough away, minimum 250 yards, 300-400 is better if you have enough line on your boat, or if there's, maybe you can go around a corner or something, get away. But essentially you want to get far enough away from that gator where you can park, anchor, power pole down, whatever you have, wait for him to surface. It's best if you can see the bait through your binoculars, because you can actually watch that gator swim over to it, bite it, tip his head up hopefully, and swallow it. Now, if a gator bites the bait, you actually want to make sure that he tips his head back and swallows that bait. You'll see it, it's pretty obvious. If he just puts it in his mouth and starts swimming away, either you want to watch him as long as you can. If he gets out of sight, you want to give him time, because if he doesn't swallow that bait, the moment you start fighting him or you start running up on him, motoring up to him, he's going to spit it out, you're going to be done. If you can't see him swallow it, you want to give them time. It's just like when you're bass fishing or anything and you see that bobber go down, you don't want to set the hook right away. You want to wait, bass fishing a couple seconds, but gator hunting minutes or even up to an hour. Once he swallows that bait, you have a much better chance of getting him close. So that's what we do here with the rod. As far as the bait setup goes, you're going to use something that looks like this. Now this is a pre-made rig. You can make them yourself. They're not super hard to do, but in the state of Florida, you cannot use a hook. In Louisiana, other states, you see it on the TV, they use hooks. In Florida, you cannot use a hook. What you can use is a wooden dowel. Looks like this. The biggest it can be is 1 inch by 2 inches. Anything bigger than that is illegal. This is a good rig. It's, some extremely strong mono. I mean, that's, I don't even know, hundreds of pound test mono. It's crimped here and it's crimped up here with a loop. You can tie your braid to this on your fishing pole, and then you've got your rig for the bait. What we use for bait typically is beef lung, cow lung. The reason we use that is because it floats. Believe it or not, it's not that hard to get. If you Google gator hunting, gator baits, gator supply, there's a bunch of people that sell it. You can even find a local butcher who will probably give it to you. But honestly, you go online, people ship it to you. Sounds weird, but it's out there. You get a beef lung, you thread this side through it a couple different times, make a couple little passes through, and then slide it down to the dowel. And you basically have a beef lung that's resting on this dowel. You can also use chicken, Cornish game hens. If you use a chicken or a Cornish game hen, you're going to want to get some of that spray insulation foam. You can get it at Home Depot and spray it in the cavity so that it floats. Beef lung will float all on its own. Whatever you use, you want to let it rot for, I would say, 24 to 48 hours max. If you let it rot too long, it'll rot. It'll get soggy, it'll get mushy, and it will fall off the dowel. But you do want it to smell. Gators, believe it or not, can actually smell very well, and that's a huge part of baiting. We've used beef lung in chicken that's brand new, does not work as well. So there's a fine line. Anywhere between 24 to 48 hours is going to give it a good stink without making it completely mushy, and then you're good to go. You're just going to want to feed this through a couple times, get your chicken or your beef lung there, tie it to your mono, make sure it smells good, and that bait's ready to go.
So like Mike explained, we'll use bait rod setup to go after gators. And he also mentioned that there's 2 other types of ways you can run a gun. You can run a gun with harpoons, or you can run a gun with rod and reel. Either way that you do it, really important thing is if you're hunting at night, you're going to want a good headlight. These headlights, Gator, sorry, we're fishing here and still watching bobbers. So this is made by Go Devil. This is just a minor headlamp, and you can really see a gator probably like 400 or 500 yards out. With this light, you're shining around, you see their eyes. Now sometimes we used to say that if you see eyes that are wide apart, that's a big gator. If you see eyes that are nice and close, that's a small gator. Now we've kind of learned over the years that this is not always the case. Sometimes you see a gator that's eyes that might be like an 8-footer, we might guess, and then you hook into it and it's a 12-footer. So Really just run up to a gator, and you're going to cast on everything that you see that goes under that makes a good bevel trail. That's typically how we do it. A gator, when it goes down, it'll start kicking up the dirt on the ground, causing gas bubbles to come up from the water, come up to the surface. You're going to see those little gas bubbles pop up, and you're going to take your spinning rod and you're going to cast about 5 to 15 feet in front of that bubble trail, because that's where the gator is. When you see bubbles come up, the gator is in front of those bubbles. Those bubbles are behind the gator. You don't want to cast exactly right on top of the bubble trail unless it's kind of just staying put, making more and more bubbles all from one spot. Then that's where the gator's sitting. But typically, if a gator is on the bottom of the water and crawling around, you will see a bubble trail coming up behind it. So like I said, you'll take a spinning rod. The rods that we use are not very expensive. This is actually just a medium action rod made by Ugly Stick, unbreakable. I've had multiple guys when we're gator hunting, including Mike, back away from me when I'm using this rod, because this tip will be at the handle when I'm yanking on a big gator. I've never had an issue with this rod even coming close to breaking. The only issue I've had, and that I would advise you, is don't get a two-piece rod. This will come apart, and it's a pain in the butt when it comes apart because it's
Oh, the little rod! Oh! Oh, we're hooked up! Sorry guys, this is now a bass fishing video. Oh, this is a good one.
Oh, dang,
He's
son.
good. He's a good one. Oh, it's a turtle!
That's a
It's a big old soft shell.
catch, clean, and cook soft shell.
Dude, look at that sucker. Oh my gosh.
All right, guys, well, Wade is hooked into a turtle here.
Dude, that was a monster bass that turned into a turtle. That's all she wrote.
All right, Wade.
All right, well, let's go back to explaining this crap.
I still have a bobber out.
Mike still has a bobber out.
All right, so where were we? You were talking about...
So anyways, you want a single piece rod so it doesn't come apart. Definitely don't use a little rod like that. That is not going to get the job done. One thing that I will say is very important.
That was awesome, dude.
Sorry, guys. One thing that I'll say is very important is, sorry about the lawnmower in the background, the neighbors love us, is a good fishing reel. If you buy a cheap reel, they break when you're putting a lot of tension on a gator. Now, we don't always just try to hoist the gator up with the rod and reel, but sometimes we do, and then your reel will explode on you and you lose the gator. This is a Florida Fishing Product reel. It's a little on the pricier end. It's like a $250 reel. It has 40 pounds of drag, which you will probably never need. But the thing I like about it is I can fit a lot of line on this reel. The line that we use, we typically will use anywhere from 50 pound to 65 pound braid. You do not need to go above that. When it comes to casting on a gator, sometimes you'll have to make a longer cast, especially when you're just following that bubble trail and you're not able to stay on top of it. You'll make longer casts at gators, and you want to be able to get that line way out there. And 100-pound line is not going to go that far. 65-pound line, you're going to have to cut your line before you break it. If you hook onto a log with this, you can put all your weight on it and it's not going to break. So there's no need to go with a 100-pound line on these casting or these spinning rods. Now, when we use a bait rod, sometimes we'll do a 100-pound line. That way, if it gets hooked on vegetation or something, we can just yank through it and don't have to worry about anything, and it'll just kind of break through that vegetation. With the casting rod, I mean, you can go as low as 50-pound braid on these. I mean, you can go lower if you really want to, and you're not planning on putting a ton of pressure on it. But I'll typically go with 65-pound line. This is Beyond Braid line. Beyond Braid makes really good quality braid, and it's cheap. I mean, I can get 100 or 500 spool of Beyond Braid, 100-pound braid for like $29. So that's stupid cheap. Versus if you get 500 yards of Power Pro, you're looking at spending 50 to 60 bucks probably. So cheap line, great company, makes really good line. The other important aspect of your casting rod is going to be your hook. You can make hooks at home. With the treble hook, you can, if you really want to do it, you can get weights. Some people will take like metal wire and will tie their weight to the bottom of it. We just buy pre-made. I mean, it really doesn't save you any money if you're going out and making your own. These are Gator Taker hooks. These hooks are great. Now, most hooks, and I would still say I wouldn't trust these 100% to penetrate a gator hide all the way. But these, we've gotten a ton of penetration on gators, and we'll show you guys some pictures of it. But these hooks dig into gators, and they're fantastic. The hooks, for the most part, though, will kind of just hang up in the hide of a gator. When you hook onto a gator, it's just kind of catching the little tips going in the hide. It's not going past the barb for the most part. And you just want to keep a lot of tension. You want to keep that rod tip bent the whole entire time. You don't want any slack in that line, because if this does not penetrate the gator, you're going to lose it 100% of the time. Any slack in it, anytime I get any slack in the line or a gator's coming towards the boat, I get nervous that I'm going to lose the gator. So these hooks are great. You don't have to get really big ones. These are about 6 to 8/0 treble hooks, I believe. Really affordable, really great company, Gator Taker. We'll put their link down below. But another thing that you're going to do is when you get the gator up beside the boat, like I said, we don't always put a ton of pressure on it with these rods, but we'll take a big hook. Now, this is a giant hook. We don't typically use one this big, but this is the only one we had kind of laying around. Our other ones we have lost to trees and stuff, but we'll normally take like a 14/0. Gator Taker makes a larger hook, and then we'll put mule tape on the back, which is like 1,200 pound rope on it. And you kind of just pitch this once the gator's close to the boat and really set the hook into them. And then you can pull them up, and then you can get that harpoon like Mike's going to explain and get that into the gator.
Okay, sorry about the lawn guys next to us. We'll do the best we can here. So we've gone over the baiting and the casting. Those are the two ways that Wade and I gator hunt. There's a third way called running and gunning, which is basically when you're in an airboat, typically full speed ahead, you see a gator, you run over the top of it, and you just chuck the harpoon. If you do it enough times, you know, you'll get one. It works with an airboat because you don't have a prop that's in the water, so you can get a little bit closer to the gator before they go under. We don't do that. I'm not going to talk too much about that. I'm sure there's videos you can see about that. What we use a harpoon for is basically the final stage of getting the gator up next to the boat. So you've got it on a bait line, you've got it on a hook, maybe you have both. You're not putting a lot of pressure on that gator because that bait can come out of its mouth, those hooks can come out of its hide, and you can lose it. Once you get a harpoon in it, I start feeling really good. I'll kind of show you what that looks like. You've got a tip that looks like this. It's a cable with this swivel head on it, and then you would tie some flat line on this that's got like 1,000 pound breaking strength. It's not going to break, and that flat line will go to a buoy. This peg on the end of your harpoon will hold the tip, and then you'll take a piece of tape so that way it holds it there, and then you've got your line that goes to a buoy. You're going to take this head and you're going to drive it as hard as you can into that gator once you have it up next to the boat.
I got it.
Once you hit that gator, if you hit it hard enough, it's going to go in, it's going to hook on and pull that off, and then that tip, if you can see it, it's going to go sideways underneath the hide like that. Once that tip goes sideways underneath the hide, it's really not coming off. I mean, I swear you could hook that gator up to a crane and lift it by its own weight, and it's going to stay on there. Once you get that harpoon in it, truly in it, do I feel good. Sometimes you get it in there, only just part of it in there or not all the way in, and it can come out. But if you really get that harpoon in it good, that gator is pretty much yours at that point. Once you have this in it, you fight the gator, you can really put muscle on it, you pull that gator up next to the boat. You know, if it's a really big gator, maybe get another harpoon in it just so you can get a better position on it. But once you get that gator next to the boat with a harpoon, you haven't done anything yet to hurt that gator. That gator is still fully alive. You've got a hook in it, that harpoon's only in it like a 1/4 inch. The gator doesn't even feel that. To kill the gator is to use what this is called a bang stick. There's other ones that are called power heads. They work a little bit differently, but essentially, you know, the whole method is the same. This is just an O-ring model. I'm gonna try to cut myself because this cord is kind of frayed on here. But essentially, and this is completely unloaded. We did put a shell casing in there so you can see what it looks like, but this has already been spent. This is just an empty casing. But this is a 44 Magnum. You'll put it in the end just like a single shot. You got 2 O-rings here. you're going to want to make sure you've got your safety here. Essentially there's a little pin in here which acts as a firing pin. You're going to want to put your safety in, which is just a cotter pin. Goes in just like that. You're going to load it carefully, and then you're going to set it just up to the second O-ring like this. Don't put your finger over the hole like I just did, but like the side, like that. It's loaded at this point, but you still have your safety in. Once you're actually ready to kill the gator, you're going to pull this cotter pin out, which would now allow the cartridge to travel all the way to the rear, hitting that firing pin. You're going to pull the gator to the surface where you can get a good shot at its head. You're going to find the back of the skull and go about 1 inch behind the skull, which is where the spine is. If you hit him in the skull, it's not the end of the world. The brain is there, but you can throw bone fragments up. You know, it's harder. You don't get as much penetration, so I like to go right behind the skull and then push the gator into the water about 6 inches to, again, help with those bone fragments, and then it's just a tap. And what that does is it pushes this bullet back into that firing pin. Essentially, it's a firearm that goes off at point blank range, basically killing that gator instantly if you do it right.
Oh,
All right, Tyler.
hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
Okay. So you see how he's got this little.
Oh, man.
Woo!
He's a
All
good
right,
one.
you see how there's the
He's a good
skull,
one, man.
yeah, and then there's like the soft part.
There's like a
So
little
we're
dip.
gonna-
You can see where the skull
I'm gonna-
meets the neck.
I'm gonna dip them under the water, and you're gonna hit them 1 inch back. You see where the first scoots start?
Yeah.
Hit 'em
Right there.
So wait for it. Hold on, I'll tell you one.
You're good. I mean,
Go ahead.
Right
Yeah,
there.
You just have to tap it.
gators are cold-blooded. They're reptiles. They move around a lot after they're dead. Most of the time they're dead though. They'll move for hours after they finally expired. Because of that, you're going to very carefully at that point. Once the gator has been bang sticked, you know it's a good shot. You can see it bleeding. You're going to want to very carefully close its mouth and pull it up onto the side of your boat. Tape its mouth shut, just because they can still move and do things, you know, and you don't know if it's a good shot always. And then you're going to take a knife, go into that, typically the same wound that the bang stick caused, and find that spine and sever those arteries and sever that spine. Its eyes should close. You should see blood coming out. And at that point, you're typically good to go. So that's what we do. You're going to get your bait, your hook, bring it to the boat, harpoon it, bang stick it, tag it, and then off to the taxidermist. And that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, leave a comment down below. We have some tags this year. We got a bunch of buddies with tags. We're going to be bringing you a lot of good footage. If we can get 1,500 people to subscribe to our page from now till gator season, and that's a tall order. We only got a couple months. We're going to give away a gator hunt. Wade and I will personally guide you. We'll take you on our tags. We'll handle all the expenses, and we'll have a good time. We've been doing this for years. We get a lot of big gators. So like and subscribe. We'll pick a winner and hope to see you guys this gator season.